Okay guys, today in class we talked about cell respiration, and I know some of you are still struggling with this process as it is very complicated. You can see here this is what your notes ended up looking like, and obviously this is a lot to remember, even though this is still a very simplified version of what's actually happening here. So I just wanted to make a short little video that you could review at home and review the steps of what's happening in each reaction. So we know that the first sort of reaction taking place in cellular respiration is glycolysis, which doesn't occur in the mitochondria, it occurs in the cytoplasm. So this begins when glucose enters the cytoplasm and is broken down into pyruvic acid. Remember, the whole point of cell respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis was taking energy from the sun and converting it into glucose, food for the plant. And now in cell respiration, we're taking food and we're converting it into a usable form of energy, ATP. So glycolysis begins this whole process. This takes place in the cytoplasm. So glucose enters the cytoplasm where glycolysis is activated, and that glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid. And pyruvic acid is going to be the material used to activate the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle, whichever one you want to call it. Glycolysis also produces NADH, and that energy-carrying molecule is going to be used to activate the electron transport chain. And then, of course, the last material produced in glycolysis is the material that's produced at every step of cell respiration, and that is going to be ATP. In glycolysis, you have 2 ATP being produced. So how can you remember what's coming in and leaving during glycolysis? Well, first, coming in should be easy because the whole point of cell respiration is to take food and turn it into energy. So we know glucose is being taken in. We know ATP is being produced because ATP is produced at every step. So how can I remember the other things being produced here in glycolysis? Each step is going to produce materials needed to activate the next steps. So pyruvic acid is going to be used to activate the citric acid cycle, and NADH is going to be used to activate the electron transport chain. So next up we have the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle. This is taking place in the matrix of the mitochondria, sort of like the cytoplasm of the mitochondria, that empty gel-filled space. So this is activated by the pyruvic acid, which was the glucose that was broken down. So activated by pyruvic acid, and carbon dioxide, that gas, is released. Now in plants, remember that carbon dioxide is going to be used for photosynthesis. It's being released by the mitochondria, used in the chloroplast for photosynthesis. In animals, this is of course going to be breathed out through the lungs. Also, you have the production of the energy-carrying molecules NADH and FADH2, and these energy-carrying molecules are going to be used to activate the next step, the electron transport chain. And then at every step of cell respiration, we of course have ATP being produced. In the citric acid cycle, you have 2 ATP that are being produced. So how can I remember what's being taken in and what's being released? Being taken in should be easy. It's the citric acid cycle. It's being activated by pyruvic acid. So that's coming in. Everything else is going out. Carbon dioxide and ATP, that should be easy. And then you need to come up with something that's going to activate the next step. So that's going to be NADH and FADH2. So the final reaction of cell respiration is the electron transport chain. This is activated by all those energy-carrying molecules that we've already produced, NADH and FADH2, and then we also have the taking in of oxygen here. And remember, the electron transport chain is happening in the inner membranes of the mitochondria. All this folded cristae that looks sort of like brains increases the surface area, allowing them to have more membrane in a smaller space. So oxygen is taken in, and then that just leaves us with what's being produced here. Water is produced as a waste product, and then at every step we have the production of ATP, so ATP are being produced by the electron transport chain, and this is where most of your energy comes from in cell respiration. So 34 ATP are produced at this step. So 2 ATP produced at glycolysis, 2 ATP produced at the citric acid cycle, and 34 ATP produced in the electron transport chains, for a total of 38 ATP produced by cell respiration. The only other thing I really want you to understand is the difference between what happens when there is oxygen available and when there is no oxygen available. And we talked about in class how when you run really hard, your legs start to burn, and that's because you've sort of used up all of the available oxygen. When there's no oxygen available, you go through only the process of glycolysis. And remember, glycolysis only produces 2 ATP, which is why once your legs start to burn, you really can't keep running for much longer because it doesn't produce that much energy. So you want to make sure you slow down your breathing, get all that oxygen back into your body so that you can go through the whole process of cell respiration, including the electron transport chain, which is where most of your ATP energy is going to be made. So we call these processes anaerobic or aerobic. The whole process of cellular respiration is aerobic, meaning that it requires the presence of oxygen. And anaerobic would be just glycolysis is anaerobic. It can occur without the presence of oxygen. So I hope this helped as a review for cellular respiration.